Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. What age do you plan on retiring? The average age for retirement in the US is 65 for men and 62 for women. But I think it's pretty common when you hang out with super savers, they often talk about wanting to retire earlier than that. In fact, 50% of Americans say they expect to retire before they hit the age of 62. Now, if you do retire around the age of 62 and you've followed somewhat of a traditional path like funding a 401k or an IRA, you likely are in pretty good shape. At this point, you have full access to your retirement accounts because you are past that required age of 59 and a half. And you're also at the age where you could start withdrawing Social Security early if you wanted to. So basically all this means is that you have access to money at this age. But what if you wanted to retire early? What if you wanted to retire before you reach that magical age of 59 and a half? As 30% of Americans say they actually want to retire between the ages of 45 and 60. How would you access your funds? If you retire earlier than the traditional age, or at least earlier than 59 and a half, you're gonna need to have some bridge accounts set up to help bridge the gap from your working years until that time where you can freely access your retirement accounts without any penalty. And the subject of early retirement, notably, is hotly debated in the financial community, with some advisors calling it one of the worst money mistakes you could ever make. And while that may seem a tad dramatic for the average American, it's probably a fair assessment. We are, as a group, lousy savers, making early retirement unaffordable. Financially speaking, it's generally far safer and far smarter to retire later. Most Americans are not super savers. Most Americans just save a small percentage of their income. First and foremost, if you want to be able to retire early, you're gonna have to save rather aggressively, or at least somewhat aggressively, so you can actually step away from the workforce and you don't need that paycheck. And also, if you do retire early, you're not going to be able to access things like Social Security. So likely you're going to have to fund 100% of your early retirement all by yourself. That's assuming you don't have a pension. If you do have a pension and it does pay out early, well then you can reduce the amount that you need to save for that early retirement. Just how much do you need to save for an early retirement? Well, everyone's different. The rule of 4% does offer up some guidance. No, it's not perfect, but when is any rule of thumb perfect? It offers a good place to start though. The rule of 4% says that you can withdraw 4% of your portfolio each year in retirement and that you can make an annual adjustment for inflation. To figure out how much of a nest egg you would need, you just take your annual expenses, multiply that times 25. So if you want to be able to spend $50,000 a year in retirement, you would need a nest egg of 1.25 million. Easy enough, right? Well, the rule of 4% is based on a traditional 30-year time horizon. But if you're retiring early, you likely have a much longer time horizon. If you want to retire in your late 40s or at 50, you might have to plan on a 50-year time horizon. Now, I know not everyone lives into their 90s or to 100, but the last thing you want to do is find yourself turning 95 and on the brink of running out of money, so you have to return to the workforce at that age. I would rather plan for a longer time horizon just to be safe. The success rate of the 4% model falls to just 36% if you use a 50-year time horizon, which means there is a very real risk of running out of money. So it absolutely seems necessary to adjust down from that 4% withdrawal rate. The other thing to consider is that the rule of 4% does not factor in fees, and all investors face fees of some sort. Vanguard actually ran the numbers on the effect of fees on a portfolio over time and found that if you use a portfolio that has a 0.2 expense ratio over a 50-year time horizon, the success rate of the rule of 4% falls to 28%. And with a 1% expense ratio over a 50-year time horizon, that success rate falls to just 9%, showing just how important it is to reduce your fees in order to make your portfolio last. Once you figure out how much you need to construct a portfolio that allows you to access funds in your early years, aka it doesn't fully lock them up. So what accounts can you use as bridge accounts in your early retirement? What accounts can you access prior to the age of 59 and a half? Roth accounts. The money you put into a Roth account is contributed with post-tax dollars. And being that you've already paid taxes on this money, the government gives you a little bit of wiggle room. You can access your contributions at any age, tax and penalty free. So if you're planning on an early retirement, it's a good idea to consider maximizing your available Roth accounts. And let's say you contribute to a Roth, a 401k, or an IRA, or perhaps both for 30 years from the age of 20 to the age of 50. That would give you sufficient time to stash away a pretty significant sum. sum. It's important to note that if you withdraw any of the returns in excess of your contributions prior to the age of 59 and a half, you will face taxes as well as a 10% penalty on that money. There are certain situations where you may be able to avoid penalties, but not taxes, and then there are unique circumstances like the purchase of your first home or in the event of a disability where you can access your contributions and returns penalty and tax-free prior to the age of 59 and a half. It is worth noting, even if you're 59 and a half or older, if you have not had your Roth account for 5 years, if you make withdrawals that exceed your contributions, if you withdraw some of those earnings, you will actually owe taxes on those earnings, but no penalty. So keep in mind that 5-year rule. The HSA or Health Savings Account. A health savings account is an excellent tool for covering medical expenses at any phase of life. When it comes to the HSA, you can contribute $3,850 if you are single or $7,750 for a family beginning in 2023. Please note the lesser amounts for 2022. The money you contribute to an HSA goes in pre-tax. You can even invest that money once it's in the HSA if you so choose, so that money could grow tax-free over time. Then, so long as you take it out to cover a qualified medical expense, it comes out completely tax-free. The money in an HSA has no expiration. There's no use it or lose it feature. You can leave that money in there as long as you want, which means HSAs are a great option for helping to cover those medical expenses in retirement or even early retirement. So long as you don't use the money you put into an HSA in the actual year you contributed, maybe you didn't need to or you simply don't want to, and instead opt to carry it with you into retirement. And while you can't use the money in an HSA to cover your monthly premiums for healthcare, it does work on deductibles and other out-of-pocket costs when it comes to dental, vision, and healthcare. So it does help to reduce the overall cost burden. When it comes to healthcare, the ACA healthcare plans can be a great option for medical coverage. Healthcare is one of the largest costs to consider if you're retiring early because you're not yet eligible for Medicare. The ACA offers quite affordable healthcare plans, and they're often far more cost efficient than purchasing a plan through a private insurer. There are different tiers of coverage options, and accordingly, the more of the cost burden you are willing to take on in the form of higher deductibles and copays, the lower your monthly premium. These plans are available through healthcare.gov. The overall cost of these plans is also influenced by your age, your health, and your zip code. And when you enter into retirement, your income is likely to drop, and a reduced income makes these plans more favorable. Subsidies are available based on income to make these plans more affordable. You can play around with the estimates yourself, but here are some of the plans that I was able to find using an assumed income of $40,000. And as you can see, these plans are quite affordable after the tax credits. The Rule of 55. If you retire or are laid off in the calendar year you turn 55 or later, or the year you turn 50 if you're a public service employee, you can actually withdraw funds from your 401k or your 403b without facing an early withdrawal penalty. Important to note, it doesn't work if you leave your job early. You can't retire at, say, 53 and then once you hit 55, start to withdraw in those accounts. You have to leave your job in the year you turn 55 or later. Also, this does not apply to IRAs, and it only works on your most recent or current 401k or 403b. You can't reach back into older 401ks and access those. But if you decide to utilize the Rule of 55 and then maybe you decide you want to go back to work, it is important to note you can continue to make those withdrawals penalty-free. Not all employers support these early withdrawals, and even if they do, they may require you to withdraw all of your money in one lump sum. Check with your retirement plan provider to figure out your plan's policies. Traditional brokerage accounts come with great freedom. Now, I know most of the time the attention goes to tax-advantaged accounts, but I love a traditional brokerage account. You can access the money in there at any time for any reason, and I love the freedom that comes with them. Yes, they have the downside of you do have to pay taxes on an annual basis when you have earnings, but if you're a fellow indexer or a bogglehead, you're investing in index funds, those don't really have high turnovers, so they don't really have much in the way of a high tax burden. And if you're a long-term investor, that gets favorable tax treatment. If you hold an index or individual stocks in your brokerage account and you hold them for over a year, once you decide to make your withdrawals, they are subject to long-term capital gains tax. In 2022, you could withdraw up to almost $42,000 for a single filer or $83,000 for couples married and filing jointly and pay $0 tax on the federal level. The tax rates do vary by state, but they still receive favorable tax treatment. And yes, these amounts adjust over time. Here are the long-term capital gains limits for 2023. Likewise, if you're interested in building a portfolio of dividend-paying stocks, qualified dividends receive the same favorable tax treatment. And of course, it depends on your situation, but perhaps these limits are well within the amounts that you would need to withdraw, and that helps to reduce your overall tax burden in your early retirement. Rather than retiring early outright, perhaps you might consider a phased retirement, one where you step down into a part-time position, so you still get some level of income, and that way you're not relying fully on your portfolio to carry you forward, but you still get some greater freedom with your time. Or you could consider Coast Fire, where you hit a certain age and a certain level of wealth where you actually stop contributing to your savings and investments. Maybe you step into a lower paying position, but one that is more personally fulfilling. At that point, you can spend 100% of your income and you can leave your investments alone. They can continue to grow and you don't touch them till a more traditional retirement age. If you had been saving a sizable percentage of your income, but then you stop doing that and you accept a lower paying position, you might be able to continue living the same or similar lifestyle. For instance, if you were working a job where you were earning $100,000 a year, but your annual expenses were, say, only $55,000 a year, you likely have a lot of wiggle room if you no longer have to contribute such a hefty amount to savings. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach. Say you take a part-time job, you could withdraw just a smaller percentage of your bridge accounts. You just have to make it work for you. Remember, retirement and retiring early is not a one-size-fits-all approach, so get creative if you want to retire early. And even if you are planning on retiring early, I still highly recommend taking advantage of tax-advantaged accounts. Yes, I know there are limits on when you can withdraw and how much you can withdraw if you're under that age of 59 and a half, but they're still phenomenal accounts. They allow your money to grow completely tax-free, and that is a huge benefit that you do not want to pass up on, because early retirement will really last only so long. There will come a point when you're traditional retirement age and you will like having those accounts in your back pocket. So if you're considering an early retirement, make use of a variety of accounts to help suit your needs. When are you guys planning on retiring? Leave it in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I hope you have a good one. Bye.